Welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Number to call, 888-589-8840. Let's grab clip number 4, Rob, if we can, to start this segment. This is Dick Durbin. And, you know, we believe in free enterprise as conservatives. That's the essence, it's the core of the economy from a conservative standpoint. We believe in free enterprise. Now, that's why you can buy a hamburger for $1. There's only one reason why you can buy a hamburger for $1. That's because of the free enterprise system, because of competition. If you've got people that are offering a similar product, the only way they can get you to buy your product is your product either has to be better or it has to be cheaper than your competitor. So what does that do? That's the only way you can sell your stuff in a free market economy. You have to produce a product that is better than your competitors or cheaper than your competitors. Who benefits from that? The consumer. Because you have to persuade the consumer. You've got to convince the consumer to make a voluntary choice to part with his money. He's not obligated to spend his money on your product. He's not required by law to do it. So you have to offer a product that's so enticing to him that he will willingly, voluntarily part with his money. And that's how you decide the value of a product. You have to price your product at a point where consumers will want to buy it. They'll be willing to make the voluntary decision to part with their money to buy your product. What does that do to prices? It brings prices down, because you know if you charge more money than your competitor charges and his product is just as good as yours, where are people going to go? They're going to go buy it from your competitor. So that's how you get a $1 burger. And so competition, free enterprise system, is the most effective way of maximizing choices and minimizing prices. It's the only thing that works. It's what Adam Smith called the invisible hand. It's the invisible hand. No government has to control it. It's just, in America's case, hundreds of millions of people making daily choices, voluntarily, uncoerced, to decide which services and which products they want to buy. That is going to result in the maximum number of choices at the lowest possible price for the consumer. Now, realize right away, the only reason you would have to mandate something, this is very important to get this, the only reason that you would have to mandate something is that you know that if people were left to their own choices, they wouldn't buy it. They wouldn't buy it. So you've got to order them to buy it. You have to use the coercive, tyrannical power of the central government to order people to buy it, to mandate that they buy it, to force them to buy it under the threat of a penalty. Now, right there, as soon as you've done that, you've admitted that you've got a lost cause. You've admitted that what you are presenting to the American people is something that they wouldn't, under ordinary circumstances, touch with a 10-foot fishing pole. So you've admitted failure just by the fact you got to mandate it to begin with. I mean, that's an admission right now. That's an admission right there that you have an inferior product that you are trying to foist on the American people. But this is the classic difference between liberals and conservatives when it comes to economic policy. That's why on economic policy, I classify myself as a hardcore libertarian. You know, the only role of the government in the economy, is the enforcement of contracts, period. That if you enter into a contract with somebody else to do business, to do contractual work, to pay a certain price for a product, and then either he doesn't give you the product or you don't pay him what you committed to do, then that's the role of government, to step in and see that justice is done. Other than that, that's it. Government has no business, no right compelling people to enter into contracts with anybody else or compelling them to buy something under some kind of penalty. So I am a libertarian, strict libertarian when it comes to economic policy. But listen to Dick Durbin, and here you're going to illustrate the difference between a conservative view of economics and a liberal view of economics. Here's Dick Durbin celebrating.
So we passed the Affordable Care Act, and not a single Republican, not one, not a single Republican would join us in that effort. We rejected the free enterprise approach to health care and said, let's have something that basically respects families, basically respects the needs we all have to have protection when somebody in our house is sick. Not a single Republican would support us, and they never have since. The bill we passed isn't perfect. Changes will have to be made. I've said that from the start, though I support it. But not a single Republican's been willing to sit down and work on bipartisan compromises and changes. Not one.
All right, we can pull out of that, Rob. That's all we need to hear that, because the main thing I want you to get out of that is Dick Durbin saying, number one, we have rejected free enterprise. I mean, that is the clearest statement you can get about what Obamacare is all about. It is about the tyranny of the central government. If we have rejected free enterprise, what's the first word in that phrase? It is the word free. That's a word that speaks of liberty. It's a word that speaks of freedom. Dick Durbin says we rejected that. We're not about freedom. We are not about liberty. And what's the second word? Free enterprise. What's the word enterprise about? It's about innovation. It's about creativity. It's about initiative. We rejected all that. We are going to do a one-size-fits-all, and we're going to cram it down your throats whether you like it or not. So a very, very telling statement on the part of Dick Durbin. You know, and he emphasized over and over and over again, not a single Republican joined us on this. Not a single Republican voted for this. Not a single Republican was willing to cross the aisle and vote for this. Now, what does that mean? That means that Dick Durbin is taking 100% of the responsibility for Obamacare. 100% of the responsibility. He said, you know, Dick Durbin saying, hey, don't give any credit to the Republicans. But that's another way of saying, hey, when this thing goes belly up, don't give any blame to the Republicans, because it's all on us. This is all on us. We get all the credit, and therefore we get all the blame for this. So Dick Durbin is owning Obamacare. Do not miss this, because they're going to be scrambling around. We'll talk about this in the second hour. They're going to be looking to blame the insurance companies. That's where they're going with this, and I'll kind of prove that to you. But don't forget, the insurance companies are only doing what they have to do because they've been ordered to do it by President Obama, rejecting free enterprise and imposing this on the American people. Dick Durbin says, we, the Democratic Party, we own this thing, lock, stock, and two smoking barrels. Well, let's go to the phones, 888-589-8840. Let's go to Lee in Plano, Texas. Lee, welcome. What's on your mind? Yes, Lee, are you with me?
Yes.
Yes, go right ahead.
Yes. Well, two things. First of all, I'm glad you played that clip by Durbin. He was kind of unwise to own that and declare that the Democratic Party is the supporting entity behind Obamacare. I'm so glad that he made that statement. I hope that that will be remembered by everyone in the future when we're able to repeal it. And I'm saying that very positively because I think that we will be able to, through the efforts of many. But the main thing I wanted to tell you about today is something I was reminded of earlier.
What's that?
And that is that, and I know I heard about this about a year ago, but it's still, as far as I know, nothing was done about it. This professor, Jose Angel Gutierrez, at the University of Texas, made this quote. He says, we have got to eliminate the gringo. And what I mean is, if the worst comes to worst, we have got to kill him. Now, why has he not been reprimanded or fired or, I mean, that's very racist. It could even lead to violence.
Well, and you know, Lee, there's a striking double standard here. You know, we had somebody guest hosting a radio program here, and he was just using it as a figure of speech. Nobody thought he meant it. Nobody thought he was serious about it, but he talked about lining people up outside a college dormitory and shooting them in the head or something like that. And we, you know, we said, look, we're not going to be able to use you again as a radio host because we've got to be careful about the kind of language we use. So when that happens in conservative circles, we take immediate action to sort of deal with that. But you had Michael Moore, you had Adam Weinstein, who's saying that people that do not believe that man is causing catastrophic global warming, he says they ought to be locked up. We ought to be thrown in jail. Not a peep. Nobody complaining about that. Nobody talking about that. And then Michael Moore, and I cannot remember, I just read this yesterday. Maybe somebody can help me. Yeah, about the Cobalt. Yeah, about the GM. Michael Moore This is the guy that talked about Cuba being the
Right.
model healthcare system in all the world. They're paying their doctors $67 a month. That was a huge raise for them. That's Michael Moore's paradise of healthcare. But Michael Moore is saying, look, the people that are responsible for the Chevy Cobalt, they ought to be killed. They ought to be executed. They ought to be put to death. And once again, just not a peep of a protest about that kind of inflammatory or incendiary language.
That's the thing that bothers me the most, how apathetic we are as Americans.
And you know, Lee, with this professor, I hadn't heard that before. That's a striking thing. But that guy was serious. You know, when you had the radio host on our network, he was obviously using that as a figure of speech. Nobody thought he meant it. Nobody thought he was serious. But this Gutierrez guy, I mean, it sounds like he meant it.
Well, I hope that everybody who has heard about this, or at least enough people to cause some commotion about it, will call the University of Texas and protest that this professor is still there if he is.
Yeah,
Professor
wow.
Jose Angel Gutierrez. And, I mean, those were, it's not like you can misinterpret those words.
Yeah.
He says, what I mean is, if the worst comes to worst, we have got to kill him.
Yeah, wow. Well, I'm going to talk in the second hour, and thank you for the call, Lee. I appreciate that very, very much, Lee from Plano, Texas. I used to do broadcast high school football games from Plano, Texas at their Plano High School. Anyway, did play-by-play. I love doing play-by-play. I'm completely off topic here, but I love doing play-by-play of football and basketball. In fact, if I hadn't gone into the ministry, I probably would have gone into sports broadcasting. Just absolutely loved it. The most fun I've ever had as a human being. Anyway, in the second hour, I'm going to talk about immigration and talk about the lie that Hispanic leaders want us to believe that the United States stole the Southwest from Mexico. And we'll give you the facts on all of that so your mind will be clear on that. Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be back after the news. Stay with us.